The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
Hooray for Hollywood, where stars are living large, in mansions with their servants and their credit cards in charge, with fame that's fleeting, but the egos never change, where everyone's a genius, except the ones who really arrange. Hooray for Hollywood, where the scandals always sell, where every whispered secret is a new tabloid's tell. Oh, how we adore the endless red carpet galore. Hooray for Hollywood, where less is always more.
Yes, indeedy. Less is always more here on Damn You Hollywoody. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radulich and Broadcasting premiere podcast, Damn You Hollywood. And he always wanted a brother. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Winfree. Yay! I know that was going to especially pain you because you have, what, 3, 4 brothers?
I have 3. I'm the oldest of 4 children, so yeah, I have 3 brothers. Hi everybody. This is Damn You Hollywood. I'm sick, so if I sound different, if I break off to cough or blow my nose, I'll try to mute myself, but I've been sick for a couple of days, and this movie did not help any of that.
Robert, don't apologize to the people. I've been sick on this show since 2016.
And your example, Mark, has led me to conclude that it's okay to let the people know.
I once died on a podcast and refused
Very
to
briefly, yes, it was disturbing. Didn't even do that good of numbers. Like, you'd think your temporary mortality would have.
Yeah, well, people didn't know I was going to die. If people had known on this podcast with Jesse Starcher and Chris Armstrong, I will, in fact, die mid-podcast, people, I think, would have tuned in. Unless you're thinking of the one I did with you when it was Keep Your Hands Off Izokin, where I vomited mid-podcast. That was fun.
No, that was different.
Okay.
I wasn't worried about you dying on that one. Like, that was just you were violently ill, which is not the same thing.
Sure.
Speaking of violently ill, we're talking about Mufasa, the Lion King.
That was the best transition we've done in the 10-year history of this show.
It wasn't getting any better than that one.
Good night, everybody. Speaking of good night, good God. Mufasa, the Lion King is a 2024 American musical drama film. Sure it was. Directed by Barry Jenkins. I guess they named the AI from a screenplay written by Jeff Nathanson. Again, I'm glad you're giving the AI names.
Just say Alan Smithy to be more honest.
Produced by the Walt Disney Manufacturing Company. The film is photorealistically animated.
No.
You might call it that.
No.
Roger Rabbit comes closer to being photorealistic than this piece of shit.
Yeah.
Serves as a prequel. See, you know you're in for a treat, ladies and gentlemen. Serves as both a prequel and a sequel to The Lion King 2019. The remake of the 1994 animated classic of the same name. Seth Rogen, Billy Eichner, Donald Glover, Beyoncé Knowles, John Kani reprised their roles from the remake. New cast members include Aaron Pierre, Kelvin Harrison Jr., Tiffany Boone, Mads Mikkelsen. Oh, I have some shit to say about Mads Mikkelsen. I know, he's just sweet, but ugh.
Watch yourself. Hang on.
I know. I know.
No, hang on. Let me preface this.
Mm-hmm.
He is the closest thing I have to saying anything good about this movie.
Okay.
The closest.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about the song that he tried to sing.
Okay, hold on. No. Okay, no, that is terrible. That
okay. As long as we agree on that.
Believe me, I want Lin-Manuel Miranda.
This podcast, if you had disagreed with me, it'd be like, no, it was fine. We're done here.
No. I want Lin-Manuel Miranda tarred and feathered after this.
Yeah, just to beat.
Can we stop giving this man work? He's a one-trick pony and has been for a decade, but because everybody and their dog decided to burst into tears over hip-hop version of Alexander Hamilton, 10 years later, 15 years later, we're still dealing with this crap. It's bad. He's bad. Stop it.
Well, he always did want a brother. God, I hate that. I have so many bad things to say about this movie. Anyway,
This is what you're in for, people. I should have brought my pitchfork and shovel on screen because we are burying.
hey, Thandiwe Newton, Lennie James, Anika Noni Rose, and Blue Ivy Carter. Could get some more names in here in her feature film debut. Poor kid. The Lion King premiered. Mufasa: The Lion King premiered December 9th at the Dolby Theater in Los Angeles and was released in the U.S. by the Walt Disney Studios Manufacturing Company on December 20th, 2024. It received mixed reviews, to say the least, from critics and has grossed $328 million on a $200 million budget. More on that a little bit later. But another great example of there is no God, not a fair and just one at least.
Okay, let me just. I'm not going to debate the theology with you because.
Please don't. Though it would make for a better discussion than what we're about to do.
But I'm not going to. Okay, just as a minor aside, you accuse this director of being an AI stand-in.
I accuse this entire movie being made by AI, and I was not alone.
No, you are not, and I'm not going to completely disagree with you.
Mm-hmm.
Just for the record, the director in this case has made 2 movies that you may have heard of. Because they were critical darlings. He directed Moonlight, which famously won the Oscar when they misread La La Land. If you'll recall that.
I do recall that, and so does everyone who watched that Oscars.
Only thing that the Oscars has done in like 20 years that got people actually interested. Screwed up. The year after, this next movie was If Beale Street Could Talk, which was another kind of, again, darling of the critical scene. That was in 2018. He hasn't made a movie since. He hasn't directed a movie since. So we continue the proud tradition of Disney in some variety of another, finding a down on their luck critical darling of a director, throwing them into the meat grinder of Disney production, and a gelatinous cube being spat out the other side.
Yeah, Chloe Zhao really should start a support group.
She would not be the first member of that group, but she absolutely could.
Yeah. Let me tell you, my kids, when they were younger, watched The Lion Guard, and apparently it had more of an indelible effect on my daughter than it did my son.
Can't imagine why.
Because when it's going to keep going, as I've told my daughter to do, and my son does what you do. When she saw this movie was coming out, and we talked about going. First of all, this is the first movie in the history of taking my kids to the movies that my daughter didn't want to see. My daughter will see everything and likes everything.
You almost took her to Joker 2. Like, she'll see anything with you.
No, they did go to Joker 2.
Oh, right. Yeah, I gave you grief about that, and then you yelled at me, and it was fine.
Yeah, and my parents gave me grief about taking them to the Joker, and y'all can go fuck yourselves. Listen,
Wow. Mufasa the Lion King lower on Lily's tier list than Joker 2.
Well, that's the thing, is like they're willing
or The Crow.
They're willing to just sort of take my hand and trust me that, I will, that I won't always pull a raccoon, and take them to see things that have some degree of value and are not utterly inappropriate. So, and again, you got to understand something. My kids just enjoy spending time with me, and they know movies are my thing, and this is how we relate to each other as father and children. And my son, because he's a lot more like you, and he's a lot like my dad, and he's a lot like me, in very good ways and very bad ways, will go see anything for the same reasons Lily will, but has a more concerted and more discerning palate than my daughter does. My daughter, like, you've accused me of kind of being a truffle pig. My daughter's even worse. She's more of a raccoon. She's just in the dumpster. Like, this seems fine.
The trash panda. Here we go.
Yeah.
I will find the value in this slop.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know if she's doing that. It's just like, this seems fine. This tastes good. And everything tastes good.
Your daughter does not have a scale. She has a line. And it's either above it or below it. It's and I don't mean this unkindly. I mean this as a descriptor. It's a relatively low bar.
But that's the thing. She's most people.
Yeah.
She is most people. Most people watching this podcast will relate more to my daughter than they will to either of us on any given day. And I'm fine. I've accepted that as.
That's very true.
Yeah, I've just accepted that as reality. I'm fine with it. So anyway, so my son has said over the course of the last year, just this year alone, there were some movies he was not excited for, and there were some movies he like begged me to take him to. Like, again, he famously I saw the TV glow just to make fun of his sister, and then was traumatized by the experience.
I'm dying. Wake me up.
He was
Mommy!
glad. Yeah, he was glad that he went, but it was kind of his moment of like, oh God, this is terrifying. And I'm legitimately upset now. Then there was my daughter, like bouncing in a fucking chair. This was so when I say this is the first year, this is the first time that I wasn't excited to go do this. I almost canceled this to go to a party tonight. I'm in no mood to have been at that party, so I'm glad I didn't go. And I would, I've always liked recording with you, so I'll record anything. It doesn't really matter. But I was not excited to see this movie to the point where I told their mother, like, she was like, "How was the movie?" And I'm like, "Well, I didn't want to see it. Jonas didn't want to see it, and Lily didn't want to see it. But damn it, we're slaves to the schedule." And she just sent me back an eye rolling emoji, and I was like, "That was about right."
That really was the like. I take your ex-wife's side on very few things when it comes to your interactions with her, but that's the appropriate response to that.
Yeah. So anyway, all of this to say, Lily was like, I didn't want to go see this. And the reason why, relating it back to the actual movie, is she knew it wasn't going to follow the lore that was set up by movies like The Lion Guard, The Lion King 2.5 or 1.5, whatever it was called.
Okay, hang on. Here's what they should have done. If you wanted to do this, you should have followed Lion King with Lion King 1.5.
Yeah.
Because if you've never seen Lion King 1.5, everybody, let me do this as follows. Here's my kind of pitch to you about this. So, Lion King, this is not a secret. Lion King is just Hamlet, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Lion King 1.5 is kind of the Disney take on Guildenstern and Rosencrantz are dead. And I say that with a lot of affection. And that would have been worth exploring. Unfortunately, the writers would have had to actually have a handle on the characters of Timon and Pumbaa instead of throwing those two half-wit jackasses out there and saying vamp.
Yeah.
More on that later. But instead, it's I'm going to save it for until we get to after the plot synopsis, but everything about this movie, just everything.
So she was a huge fan of The Lion Guard. She likes all the whatever movies came out after the original. She loves the original. I think she wants to see like the Broadway musical. The Lion, and I'm going somewhere with this. The Lion King is an IP she adores in a world she would like to be a part of. And being a 13, almost 14-year-old girl and having grown up with a lot of this stuff, again, she watched every episode of The Lion Guard and loved it. She was telling me she's read stuff about The Lion King. She's seen videos on it. She is a fan. F-A-N. She is a fan in the truest sense of the word, and she followed the lore and she was living in the universe of The Lion King. And when she saw that they took the lore of The Lion King that she knew, that she lived in, that felt real enough to her to escape to, as we all do with fiction, and threw it in the fucking trash, she went, I reject this movie. I don't want to go see it. And she told me that, and I looked at her and I held her shoulders and I gave her a hug and I kissed her on the forehead and I said, "Welcome to being a Star Wars fan." Thank you. Thank you.
That was that is very much the Star Wars fan journey.
Marvel too. I mean, Marvel in many cases did it to themselves, but
I think that's the big distinction, because Star Wars had it done externally after Lucas sold.
Yeah,
like he made his 6 movies and then sold for $4 billion and gave everybody these as he walked into the sunset. Then Disney was like, okay, I will piss all over all of this. But fans can still kind of go, there's only 6 Star Wars movies.
Right.
Whereas Marvel, it unforced error. It was just imploding.
Well, here's the thing. Every way you look at Marvel, from every angle, from every aspect of it, they did this to themselves. Yeah. Because, DC resets itself every few years. So it's like, I can understand why a lot of DC fans are just like, who cares? They've now here's what I want to say before I get too far away from my central point. The reason why, more so than just having gone through it with my own IP, the reason why I sympathize with Lily, and this relates to Mufasa the Lion King in a lot of ways, is when you take a world that people escape to, that they claim their own, and it feels real to them. Pro wrestling is a really great example of this, but I'll go on. I will talk about this for days if I go on that tangent. And then you break the veneer, and it's now too easy to see that this is in fact a fantasy. This is not a lived-in world anymore. It's changing too much. It's too malleable. It's too fluid. It keeps resetting. Then no one wants to live in that world anymore. Now you've completely broken the fantasy. There are so many examples of this. We just had Marvel did it to themselves when they did the new Secret Wars from a few years ago that I guess they're going to base the next couple of Avengers movies on. They reset that entire universe, and it pissed a lot of fans off because it was like, okay, well, you took everything I knew about this world and you destroyed it, and then you replaced it with something inferior, and the movies went, okay, hold my beer.
Yeah, and you mentioned this happens with professional wrestling all the time, and whatever your threshold for that particular genre happens to be, professional wrestling is weird. It's weird in the whole scheme of like escapist fiction, because professional wrestling tries to blur the line between fantasy and reality in a lot of respects, but professional wrestling is also so abjectly stupid.
Yeah,
and I say this as a guy who has at various points in my life been a fan. Like, my fandom waxes and wanes with pro wrestling. And I cover it. I got paid to do this. And this is a different line for different fans. But when pro wrestling goes into that zone, like, there's a sweet spot with pro wrestling for most people. And
here, I'm gonna make this easy for you and for the people listening and kind of bridge that gap. There's a story they told which was very much based in reality. It was carried out as a fiction, and it ends with a fiction. But it felt so real to everybody else, including myself, that for a moment I forgot it was a fiction and cried like it was reality. I cried happy tears of joy. A moment my ex-wife will never truly understand, because she watched it with me and she watched me do it, and she goes, I don't understand what is happening with you. And I went, I lived through this story with this person, and I'm so happy they succeeded. I'm so happy I can't contain myself anymore. It was the Daniel Bryan versus the Authority, ending with his title win at 30. WrestleMania 30. I don't want to. People aren't here to listen to us talk about wrestling, but it was a moment where they blended reality and fiction so well, and they paid it off so perfectly. You couldn't help but be caught in the wave of emotion, especially if you were like me and you over empathize with Daniel Bryan.
Yeah, and the point with wrestling is, and this is going to be different for other people. Your line's going to be different. But if it gets too stupid,
right,
people will tune out. Conversely, if you get too stupid while still pretending it's real, people tune out.
Right.
That's the problem AEW has. Don't say that to take a shot at them. But there's a lot of that stuff that happens in that promotion at the moment. If you take everything too seriously and you have, Seth Rollins pretending that he's the world heavyweight champion when he gets double-legged by a fat fan out of the stands, sorry, I'll take a shot at both sides just to piss everybody off so we're all equal here. You've lost me more than a little bit.
Right. So rounding this back to Mufasa.
To get back to the point, the way people feel about their fandoms, about what they've, especially there's two sweet spots in the development cycle for where you really, this is where I go. One of them is like 8 to 12. Whatever you like when you're 8 to 12. And it's not always the same thing, but you will have a special place in your heart for the fantasy you escape to when you're 8 to 12. And then about 14 to 16. You're going to get a different escapism. But after that, it's kind of regressing towards the things that you escaped in those ones. Not that you don't like other things, but nothing I've discovered as a fan, quote unquote, after the age of 20 has a big like pull.
Yeah.
I like it, but it doesn't. Anything that I discovered after that point, most of it you can do different stuff with, and I don't care. Like I may not like it, but you're not going to get an emotional reaction out of me.
So to make this point and take it home, they disrupted the lore of the Lion King so badly they drove a 13-year-old girl fan away.
Yep.
To the point where she didn't want to see the movie. And when it was over, I hated it. My son hated it. There's a TikTok of him screaming in pain how much he hated it. And then there's my daughter, who there were elements of it that she liked because she's who she is, but a lot of it she didn't. But the thing that hurt her the most was that it completely disrupted the universe she knew and took as her own and created this wholly new alien thing that didn't have any attraction to her, for her. She just was like, this didn't feel like the Lion King. I don't know what the hell I was watching. And I'm like, all right. And again, every angry dude bro or toxic fan or what's the other one? The incel, whatever name you want to throw out there, has gone through this. And I'm sad that it happened to her because it's not a pleasant thing when it happens.
You know what? It's not pleasant, but at least it happened to her at a time in her life when she's in an emotionally malleable state, so she'll be able to rebound.
Right. Yeah. And, and like I said, we talked about it for quite some time. So it's not, like she didn't have to go through it and be like, no one understands me. It was like, nope, I was right. Like, kiddo, I've been through this more times than I can count. Let me show you how I got over it.
Let me tell you the first time this happened, then the second, then the third,
right,
then the fourth.
And now we're on 930. All right, so speaking of 930, let's do a plot synopsis and see if we can keep it to 5 minutes.
Okay, so our framing device for this story is Simba's daughter, Kiara, being told this story by Rafiki. Simba and Nala go off into the jungles because she's about to give birth and they want to do it out there for some reason. And Kiara is afraid of a thunderstorm, so Timon and Pumbaa are there babysitting, and Rafiki provides this story to the child to keep her from freaking out too much over the weather, because who's not afraid of thunder, right? So Rafiki tells the story of Mufasa. And we are introduced to him as a young cub. He, his mother, and father are wandering the parched wastelands of Africa in search of the green place far away. They have a name for it. I don't care enough to remember it.
I was calling it Malawi, which is a real place.
I think it's Malele. I'll put on my.
Keep going.
Yeah. And for the life of me, I can't remember the place they're trying to get to in the Land Before Time, but that was the only thing I could think about throughout the course of this movie.
I like that you were calling it the Green Place, going all the way back to fucking Furiosa.
Yeah. So they're traveling, and then there's a big rainstorm and a flash flood, and Mufasa gets separated from his family, almost gets eaten by crocodiles, but is saved by a young Taka, or Scar, and his mother, Eshe. But the old lion, the old male lion over there is like, no, we don't take in strays, much less male strays. I have to kill this thing now. Thanks for making me work. And they agree that if Mufasa and Taka have a race, that if Mufasa wins, he can stay. So they have a race, and Scar throws the race because he wants a brother.
He's always wanted a brother. Said in the first 6 seconds of them meeting.
So Mufasa stays, but the old lion is still pissed and says, fine, you go live with the women. You will live with the females, and you will stay away from the shade tree with the other old male lions. At which point one has to wonder how stupid this lion is for sending the breeding age male to be with all the females, but hey. So Scar and Mufasa grow up together, and Mufasa he learns how to hunt. And he's got the best sense of smell, and because he is a male who learns how to hunt, he is the pick your silly title for the chosen one here.
He also takes the yellow lightsaber and names himself Skywalker.
Yeah, something to that effect. So this is all disrupted ultimately by the arrival of the White Lions. I will explain why this bothers me after. So a couple of White Lions show up, and they're big, and they attack Mufasa and Eshe, and Mufasa's able to kind of fend them off, and he shoves one of them onto a broken branch against a log and kills it. And turns out that was the son of the king of the White Lions. This is Kiros. And he who decides we're going to have vengeance. So anyway, this pride of lions gets together, and the old king decides, you know what, my bloodline must persist. So Scar, Mufasa, you must leave because this is a fight we can't win, but we're going to fight anyway because it's what we do. So you guys escape, and that's what we're going to do. So they head off. The lions show up, and one of the worst. There are no good. Let me start with this. There are no good songs in this movie. None.
Not a one.
Not a one of them. The villain song
is laughably bad.
It's pretty bad. It might. I can only remember, like, I don't know if it's worse than the, My Brother song, but it's close.
Let me say this. The villain song is so off-key silly that it was one of the few moments of joy I had watching this, but it was that Madam Web joy of I'm laughing at you. Ha ha, your medium is dying moment for me.
Yeah.
I've always wanted a brother. I was going to save this for my craft review, and I don't mean to be like people who keep interrupting you in the plot synopsis, but he said, within minutes of meeting Mufasa, I always wanted a brother. They don't know each other. He doesn't know him from a fucking hole in the wall. He just sees this other one, and it's a lost lion trying to find his pride. And this other lion basically claims, he goes, well, I've always wanted a brother, so you're mine now. And I couldn't help but think of me saying to a vast number of people within the last couple of months, the next girl who claims me as her boyfriend after one date, I'm blocking. Like,
good call.
The lacking of boundaries with this character. I had a visceral reaction to that. But the song also sucks.
Yeah, again, there's no good songs here. Lin-Manuel Miranda is a blight on the entertainment industrial complex.
Shout out to my friend Elizabeth who put everyone in their fucking place for having good things to say about Lin-Manuel Miranda.
So anyway, the White Lions kill everyone of the old pride off screen, of course, because Disney. They then start chasing down Scar and Mufasa. Scar and Mufasa are able to escape eventually. And they stumble across Sarabi because we need a love triangle. We really need a love triangle here, Mark. Don't you understand?
Mm-hmm.
So Scar falls pretty hard for Sarabi, and Zazu is with Sarabi because, of course. Then we meet Rafiki because he is a mandrill who was cast out by the Congress of Baboons for being weird. This is a thing we have to take time for in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But Rafiki is going to the same place they are, and because he's a mystic monkey, they kind of go, you know what? We'll not eat him, even though we're starving, and we will just we'll follow the monkey. Nothing bad will come from this, right? So they wander. They start. They have to cross some snowy mountains. Again, there's the love triangle aspect. They get attacked by the White Lions at one point, and there's an elephant stampede because Mufasa just has no luck with stampedes. I wonder if this is foreshadowing.
Hang on. If you could do
that. He has a good track record of saving people from stampedes, but not himself. His one weakness.
Stampedes.
Well, that and water. He's like Sonic and can't swim.
Mm.
Anyway, while they're traversing some snowy mountains, Scar oversees Mufasa and Sarabi becoming close, and they sing a song, and he's annoyed about this because it's not a very good song, and then he sings a song, which is even worse, which triggers an avalanche, which is well-deserved.
The earth reacting to the music in this movie.
It really did. But Scar goes to the White Lions and says, look, I can help you track them through the mountains because you guys are sucking at this. And Keros kind of goes, well, I did lose a son, and you lost a father. So if I kill Mufasa, maybe you can come with us. We're kind of an accepting group in that respect. And Scar seems amenable to this, so they travel all the way to the Pride Lands. And Mufasa shows up for 5 minutes, and everyone goes, we know you, Mufasa. You've got the outsider pack of lions chasing you. And we all just throw up our hands at the terrible script writing. So Sarabi goes to kind of rally whoever is there that will help them. Mufasa fights off Keros briefly and then gives a speech that everyone decides to agree with. So all the creatures of the Pride Land rally together and stomp out most of the white lions. Keros drowns while fighting Mufasa. Mufasa is saved from drowning by Scar again. Scar's betrayal is revealed, and but he does save Mufasa. Bad writing. More on that later. Scar does get swiped by Keros and gets the, appropriate scar. Mufasa is then anointed the king of the Pride Lands. He is the Lion King, and he's told, you really should banish Scar. He tried to kill you, and he's not trustworthy. And Mufasa goes, well, he's still my brother, so he'll have a place here. And I'm sure this won't come back to haunt me. And then this is all intercut with going back to Timon and Pumbaa and Rafiki and Kiara in the most grating way possible. So this all concludes with Rafiki talking to Kiara about how, the great kings of the past live in the heavens. And Kiara stops being afraid of the thunder, and then she goes to meet Simba and Nala as they're returning, and they introduce their young son. And Kiara starts telling this young kid who can't even speak yet the story of Mufasa, and that's where it ends. And that's where it all ends.
Okay, I'm going to try to do this without going into a Sam Kinison-esque rant. It's funny, I've listened to the critically acclaimed guys review this. I've read some stuff. Obviously, we're not, not to give away the next segment, but we're not, it's got a high audience score. People are enjoying it. Here's what I think is wrong with this movie. I don't think it is better in terms of animation than the first one. The first one gets a lot of crap because it's too photorealistic and lions aren't expressive. They can emote to a degree. They can certainly show when they're angry, but they are, but what makes the 1994, I believe it is, animated classic, what it is that they are hand-drawn animated cartoons, which they can make expressive.
Yeah.
And the 2019 one, as well as it did, because they went so photorealistic, it was hard to do that, if not impossible. And it was like they took that note and went, okay, well, we'll correct that, and we'll try to meet somewhere in the middle, and it made it look way too cartoony. So, in the photorealistic version of lions in an African plain, you manage to miss both targets. It's too silly looking and too cartoonish for me to take it as realistic. And it's so far along the realistic side that it's not that interesting to look at.
Yeah, this is the worst part of the Uncanny Valley.
Yeah. Barry Jenkins, God bless him. And here's the thing: is I don't think he's a bad director. I don't want to keep pinning bad movies on a director and saying this makes you all bad. That's not fair. I think he was trying to make up for everything I just said by not keeping the camera still ever. It was like the first and second unit were running around with these cameras and like putting them on rope and just swinging them around the studio. Like, if you've ever been on a theme park ride that is supposed to be some sort of simulation, what they do is they show you a movie, they shake the chair, and it gives you the effect of feeling like you're moving within that space. That's what this felt like. I haven't seen Cloverfield, But everyone tells me that the constant moving of that camera made people physically ill. I was starting to get there with this movie. It's that, like, if they had been moving the chair too, and I don't tend to get seasick, and I don't get sick on rides. I was just at Disney this past weekend, went on a whole bunch of roller coasters, nothing doing. I was perfectly fine. So it's not that, it's the constantly moving the screen. Nothing stands still long enough for you to focus on anything. And then the other thing that they're doing is extreme close-ups.
Oh, those were just...
Good God. Like,
I got so sick of those.
Here's the thing. We praise the substance for the use of the extreme close-up to signal how gross this movie was going to get over time. I don't know what we're doing with the extreme close-up in this movie, other than putting on display in big neon letters, "This is phony as a $3 bill."
Yeah.
It drove me up the fucking wall. The voice over work here is fair to middling, but I'll tell you
it's utterly... I'll tell you what it is. It's utterly forgettable.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, and there were two spots where, okay, so Preston Nyman, who doesn't even have a hyperlink on Wikipedia, took over as Zazu and made me miss John Oliver. And like, I'm not Alexis, or some of the other people who are big animation people here who, they really do key in to a lot of voice work and voice actors and go, oh, this person's so great, and this person's this, and and we'll spend hours on this podcast talking about voice work. Typically, if it's bad, I'll comment on it. If it's exceptional, I'll comment on it. Everything in the middle, I just go, it's fine. I really miss John Oliver. That's how bad this was. Like, and they were trying to like recapture the magic of some of the character interactions from the 2019 and more especially from the 1994 one. And this is what I mean by this felt like it was created by AI. It was like somebody took the 94 movie and the 2019 movie, threw it into AI and said, create a sequel. And voila, Mufasa, the Lion King. The character interactions and some of the character, like I said, the voice acting that doesn't really work. And it only seeks to remind you that there was much better once upon a time. The rest of like I said, Mads Mikkelsen's song is so over the top, silly, and stupid, and not well sung that I was laughing during that scene. And here's the thing: if you like say one good thing about this movie, I'm gonna put a gun to your head and shoot you. Fine. The White Lions looked awesome. Too bad they were poorly used. We were talking about professional wrestling earlier, and I said one of the things that has always bothered me is when you have like these like 6'5", built like a brick shithouse, muscular dudes that look like they could wreck anything, and the WWE has historically turned a lot of them into comedy characters. Some of the ones that may not have turned into anything, and some of the ones that came in as superstars, they just treat like clowns, and no matter how good they look, it takes all the oomph right out of them, and you're just like, what are we left with here?
Watching them have to sell for Adam Cole.
So since I don't want to spark a debate with Robert, I won't name the three guys I was thinking of. But
no, you know what? Go ahead. I'm not going to debate you on
it. Goldberg being probably like the best example of this, when they brought him in after WCW shut down. Like, again, he's supposed to be this big, intimidating wrecking machine, and that's about his only quality that makes him, that makes him a buy. And they turned him into a clown, and there went any believability that he could wreck anybody. I can't remember the guy's name, but he ended up doing a better job in TNA.
I assume you mean Matt Morgan?
Matt Morgan, yeah. Matt Morgan looked like he should have been like the king of the 2000s. Turned him into a joke. So I could go on. But my point being that the White Lions looked intimidating. And in fact, they were like, it was the one part of this movie I kind of was looking forward to because I wanted to see what they would do with them. I also wanted to hear the actual White Lion band every time that they came out, but that wasn't going to happen. Let's see, When the Children Cry or something like that. But yeah, I wanted them to be vicious. I wanted them to be, this goes to the next thing I'm going to say. I wanted them to be deadly, violent, really intimidating monsters. Really give people something to dig into with this. Mufasa becomes king because he was able to take out this giant group of killer tank predatory lions. And meh.
And instead, again, he arrives in this location and 2 minutes later gives one speech and everyone decides he's the best.
Well, do you know who the intimidating big killer lions is? Like the Coven of Lion Witches, which is how they're voiced. Like the lionesses that are giving chase to him, like one of them literally, like you talked about Hamlet before, one of them sounded like one of the witches from Hamlet. Like Jesus.
Well,
Macbeth,
hang on, the witches
Macbeth.
are from Macbeth. Yeah.
Yeah, I corrected myself. But it's like, it's like, oh, we're gonna get you, Mufasa. I'm like, oh my god, what are we doing here? So I understand this is a PG movie. I understand this is for general audiences. I understand this is for children. There are limitations.
There's still things you can do.
Well, okay, so you know where I'm headed with this. There's a lot of clawing and biting going on in this movie. For God's sakes, one of the main characters, Scar, gets cut across the eye, and
We get some blood.
And this entire movie is utterly bloodless. We are killing animals in this movie with biting, with claws, with shredding weapons, and there's no blood. And not that because I like a big gorehound and I want to see blood everywhere, but you can't. Again, you're breaking the reality when you have a lion biting and clawing and shredding another animal's flesh, and there's no blood. What are we doing here? It's like, if you either don't do that at all, or do it, but find a way to get around it. Like, you can cut away from that sort of thing. You can kind of, you can cut away from the actual action and then cut back to blood splatter, do something with a shadow. There was other ways to get around this other than I literally bite you full scale on screen and nothing happened, and there's no reaction, there's no blood.
You've got the wonderful white aesthetic of the lions. If there's no reason they shouldn't have been blood soaked when chasing Mufasa and Simba, or Mufasa and Scar, that first segment.
Yeah.
Like after they deal with the old pride, when they're chasing them down, there should be blood on the maw. This area here, blood. That's it. That's all we need. But it does everything you need it to do.
This is yet another movie coming out of the, we're going to adapt this for an audience of women school of writing. There was so much of that in this movie where it's like, we know women are going to come see this. We know young girls are going to come see this. So let's write this for them. Let them hear familiar things that they're going to agree with all over this movie. And
hey, Mufasa, how do I talk to women?
Yeah.
Well, you got to notice things about them, act disinterested, and then really listen to, like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. There's a lot of that.
I'm not even saying that's bad advice for how you interact with other people. I'm saying, like, why is this here at all other than as a studio note?
Yeah. I always wanted a brother. Not only is it a dumb song, but again, and I joked about it before, but it goes to the writing of this. It's something that Robert and I have said about other movies, where why are characters doing what they're doing because the movie said so?
Yeah.
And it's again, talking about going all the way back to the beginning of this, we're talking about, keeping within the reality, making things believable. When characters are doing things that make sense, that follow logic, you're drawn in. When you have characters doing things that are illogical, that don't go with the flow of the narrative, it breaks the reality, and now you're watching a fiction, and you lose interest. And there's a lot of that in this movie. And him going, just immediately adopting Mufasa from out of nowhere, and then it's like, and then bonding with him like that. It's like it's the pitch meeting thing of why are the male lead and the female lead in love with each other? Well, because they're both attractive and they're stars of the movie. That's why. Okay.
Yep.
You can't be this self-aware. And speaking of self-aware, my last comment: there's a guy in here who's essentially accusing both of us of being racist, which I find amusing, especially me. And I have to address his comment in a second, but I'm not going to put these on screen. But So it feels like they barely. Somebody made the comment, and it might have been on Critically Acclaimed, where it felt like no, it was a TikTok that I saw, where it felt like they wrote an outline, gave the outline to Lin-Manuel Miranda, and said write songs about this, and then wrote a plot around the songs he wrote. And then they realized they didn't have enough. And then they realized they didn't have enough movie, and they went back, and there was a studio note of where are Timon and Pumbaa.
They're basically Homer's pitch for Poochie.
And
like clockwork, every 15 minutes, where's Timon and Pumbaa? We cut back, and here's Timon and Pumbaa.
Again, I'm not as passionate about a lot of stuff that we cover on here like I used to be. Like the stuff I'm passionate about, we've more been doing on Triple Feature or stuff like that. It's a lot of the indie stuff or a lot of the not, high IP that we tend to focus on Damn You Hollywood. That's where my passion's been lying as of late. Therefore, I don't have a giant emotional reaction to certain things that are happening, no matter how stupid they are. I did with this one. About the third or fourth time they broke the fourth wall, I almost screamed in the middle of the theater, stop breaking the fourth wall. What are you, Deadpool? And they did it. They were referencing the earlier movie as a movie. They kept breaking the fourth wall.
We can't sing Hakuna Matata because we'll get in trouble with legal.
Yeah. I'm like, this isn't funny. This doesn't match the tone of the other movie that you're... It was like they decided to do a Mystery Science Theater 3000 with the characters from a previous movie in the movie.
Yeah.
Bold choice, Cotton.
Did not play out well.
Here? Yeah. I absolutely hated this movie. I feel bad because I don't want to hate it. I don't want to go into the whole thing of how unnecessary it was. The 2019 one made over $1 billion. It's the one movie of all of these remakes that has made the most money. There's no talking to Disney executives anymore. There's no getting through to them with logic. So I can see. So that's why they made a second one. But this feels so devoid of any kind of like personality. Like I said, it feels like it was done entirely by AI. That I don't want Disney to sort of shit on itself and ruin its own brand, but it keeps doing that. More on that when we talk about Snow White next year. Robert?
Saw that trailer again in front of this movie. And it made me want to check out, Mark. That movie looks so bad. All right, let me start with my one kind of positive from this movie. Because I said I had one thing I can say that's kind of positive. The song aside, I actually think Mads Mikkelsen is enough of a professional to have done a decent job kind of imbuing a little bit of menace, a little bit of gleeful maliciousness into the main antagonist. So I think that deserves acknowledgement. He's a professional, and bless him for it. The songs in this are terrible, and that's a real problem. The actual score is not good either. The movie score is pretty poor, and the only time you get anything loosely emotional is when they just wholesale use stuff from the original animated one in 94. This movie is everything wrong with modern filmmaking. All right? Let me start there. Everything wrong with modern filmmaking. What do we got here, Mark? We got IP mining, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of doing anything new, we're doing a prequel, so we don't have to worry about any consequence to anything.
Well, because the market has told them that unless they have the rare, exceptional, beautiful, beautiful, new and interesting movie, people are only going to go to the movies for something they've seen before and have an emotional attachment to. This is what we've done this to ourselves.
I'm not saying we haven't. I'm saying
no, but that was for the audience because we are commenting on the state of film in a lot of ways, and that's kind of what this podcast really has become. But again, why does Disney do what it does? Because we, the marketplace, told them this is what we'll accept. Now they're doing it badly. That's the problem.
And even then, I think you should have a degree of emotional and artistic courage to try and buck trends every now and then, but
sure,
that's a different discussion. But again, we're doing prequels, so there's no fear of emotional trauma. Like, we all know who survives this thing. You're never worried about Mufasa. You're never worried about Rafiki or Zazu like, we know they live. No tension.
Sorry, that was my son's criticism on TikTok. He was just like, "Oh, wonderful! They went to the solo school of movie making, where we get to learn the origins of where Rafiki got his stick."
And how the earthquake shaped Pride Rock the way it is.
Yeah,
Isn't that special?
Yeah, everyone's been talking about that, which I think is fine, hilarious.
Again, so we've got that. This mild fixation on minutia that no one actually cares about because we're doing a prequel. So here, member berries. Songs by Lin-Manuel Miranda, which is just a blight on everything. Overuse of CGI, an unsteady camera, and a nothing story. Everything wrong with modern filmmaking is going on in this movie, in one place, in one time. It's kind of impressive. If you really want to think about it that way.
I just think of Kermit the Frog. It's amazing. Not a single thing you've done has been right.
It almost takes effort to be this bad.
Like they sabotage their own movie.
You can't have done this unintentionally. Like, you almost think that can't happen.
This is a cast full of talented people, both behind and in front of the camera. You know, how do you all mess this up so badly?
Yeah, the voice acting we already mentioned again. I gave Mads Mikkelsen a mild shout out, but even his role, like, everyone talking in this could be replaced easily and no one would notice or care.
Yeah.
There's nothing standing out there. The characters make decisions based on what the plot wants them to do, not what the characters should do. The entire dynamic between Mufasa and Scar feels off in oh so many ways. To say nothing, by all logic, Mufasa should have disposed of Scar in one way or another at the end of this. Or Scar should have let Mufasa drown. There was no upside to him saving him. Like, that dynamic has to be right to set up everything for the sequel. You threw that and you half-assed that to throw it under a bus because you already know what's going to happen. It's bad writing. It's bad character interaction. This movie is 2 hours long. It does not need to be 2 hours. There are the constant cutbacks to our narrative framing device that are grating, annoying, and frankly made me want to pull a Marxism, pull out my dick and piss all over the theater. Just like, stop. Stop doing this. Stop cutting back to Timon and Pumbaa and their stupid commentary. God.
What kills me about that is if you go back to the original animated feature, like, yes, they're funny characters, they're comedy relief. Simba's journey is to outgrow them. They are the idols of temptation that he has to turn away from in order to become the hero for his people.
Yeah.
And yet we celebrate them, and this is a big problem I have with our culture. These idols of temptation, these tour guides to Neverland, these symbols of arrested development are celebrated as if this is what we should be. This is what you like, right? This is what you like? You like to never be an adult? You like to never grow up? Well, here it is on the camera for all to see. I've really come around to your like detest of Deadpool for that same reason. This works in small quantities, not as a goal to ascend to.
Well, and the other reason it works with Timon and Pumbaa and the original one is they grow out of it too.
Yeah.
Like, Simba is the responsibility they feel for kind of helping raise Simba is that they go with him away from their hedonistic pleasures into the journey and the fight to reclaim responsibility in his homeland. Like, they grow. They're not the same as when you start. And here we are now.
Right, and when we meet them in this movie, after all of that, they've regressed. They're still same idiots, idiot creatures that they were at the start of The Lion King.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad writing. It's bad character work. Again, everything about this is bad. I struggled to find one or two things that I thought were okay about this. For the most part, this is just a bad movie. And I can't say anything all that positive about it. It's when your entire finale sequence is a guy who just arrives at one place giving one speech and rallying all the different animals of the Pride Lands to fight off the evil white invaders. What are we doing here? What has this character done to demonstrate or command any kind of loyalty on that level? Nothing. But the script says he's the Lion King, ergo he is the Lion King. Just sad. Bad writing. So, yeah, that's where I stand on this. This might make one of my 5 worst movies of the year when it's all said and done. I got to rehash that list, but
Solidly on my list.
It's probably going to wind up there. Yeah, this is just bad. And the real thing this screws up, and I mean this sincerely, it screws up the relationship between Scar and Mufasa at pretty much every step. That relationship is the foundation of the tragedy that incites all of the Lion King. And if you don't have a good handle on that and how to bring that to life, you don't have anything related to a prequel to that movie, and you don't here. You have the worst YA style love triangle I've seen in a little bit.
It's not quite as bad as Uglies, but
I said in a little bit. Yeah, there's nothing there. Like, you don't actually address Scar's ambition. This all becomes about the girl. And that's a major problem. I'm not saying it can't be a component. It can. But that's all you've got here. And it's bad. Everything about this is bad. So now that we've been accused of racism on every front. Oh, I meant to mention that actually. Like, why the white lions for this amused me to some degree or another.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't actually race baiting. So there was the original Lion King kind of got sued over basically ripping off a movie called Kimba the White Lion. So this is kind of their shot back. Hey, the white lions are the bad ones.
Nice.
So there's that. Yeah, there's a lot of missed opportunities here. I would really love to see like an R-rated cut of this movie, believe it or not.
It doesn't need to be fully R, but I would at least like,
PG-13. Like, let's lean into what we're doing here.
Yeah. So, all right, we're done with this review, and normally this is where I would go into the money, but I do want to address this guy's point. So, there's a guy in our comments. If people are interested, check out the comments. But essentially, his argument is, and he's fine, and I'm going to treat him with respect. I appreciate that he's watching. And look, I'll be the first one to tell you that if you listen to us out of context without hearing anything else that we've done, or you selectively listen to it and everything you listen to sounds a certain way, I can understand why he jumped to this conclusion. So I'm not going to mistreat him or anyone else that listens to us, but I do need to address this. So his thing is, this is clearly this is clearly like a black aesthetic, and we're aggravated, in his opinion, that because this has a black aesthetic, that and not a white aesthetic, that we don't like it, which we've just outlined why we didn't like this movie. And I really find it hilarious, considering the stuff I like.
I mean, considering you, like,
I know, and I guess he didn't see the entire 2-year run of From the Corner to the Deuce that I did with Jesse, but it's neither here nor there, and I don't need to do the I have black friends routine, because that's not going to make my point for me.
Dude, you grew up in the hood. Like,
don't help me. But his thing is, his central argument is you don't appreciate stuff made for black people. Okay. The first one I said to him was Soul. We gave that rave reviews.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't really matter it doesn't really matter who that was made for, or the fact that the main character in it was a black jazz musician. Who gives a fuck? We appreciated it on its merits. It was a well-made movie. Then that one was done by Pixar, but for Pixar went in the toilet. And I'm trying to think, like, if all he's ever heard us do is the Little Mermaid review, yet another one that made my bottom 5, yet another one led by a black actress. All right, you got me. Put the cuffs on. But I outlined why the Little Mermaid sucked, and I was the one saying it didn't matter that she was black. That was like guys like Andre from Midnight's Edge that like don't take stuff that's part of that's part of European ancestry and culture and race swap it like that. And I said, and my argument to that was, why not? Why not do an interpretation of the Little Mermaid that is Afrocentric, Caribbean centric, etc.? I loved that aspect of the Little Mermaid. I said so at the time. They botched it every other way. Like I think it was an interesting idea. It was an interesting aesthetic to take the Hans Christian Andersen, like Nordic European Little Mermaid and go, what if it's Caribbean? Okay, let's run with that and see how well it does. And then the poor girl couldn't, much like Cynthia Erivo, can't sing and act at the same time, was one of my comments about her.
She's Halle Bailey, a very good singer, not a very good actress.
She acts just fine. She sings just fine. What she can't do is sing and act.
I disagree on the acting component, but see our review of The Little Mermaid for that in detail.
I'm going to put this on screen just because, I appreciate the fact that he gave this a listen. But our buddy there from Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do, I love you guys for ripping this shit up. I would have rather stuck my dick in a McGregor and see this cash grab. We're here for you, Chris. I'm trying to think of like what else we have seen that proves the point that I'm trying to make. And again, I've done a lot of television shows. Sheshi and I reviewed.
We see a lot of stuff. We talk about a lot of stuff. But
I don't think either one of us has ever said at the get-go, I don't like the fact that there was a. I think I've made the race swap comment once, and it was it was for Snow White.
Where really, if you want to explore the Snow White story in a different setting, I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying.
So I was actually talking to my kids about that, because that came up, and they were like, what can you do with Snow White? Anything you want. It is a Grimm's fairy tale, and you can absolutely lean into all of the elements of the Grimm's fairy tale. And if you want to tell an Afrocentric one, an Asian-centric one, if you want to tell an LGBTQI version of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, God bless you. Run with it. Let your imagination run wild. Do any version of Snow White you want. If you're going to remake the animated classic, though, it should probably resemble the animated classic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's my problem with this new one. This new one, they want to take the animated classic and go, but Lord of the Rings now. And also Wonder Woman. And I'm like, no. do that not with the animated classic. Just do your own fucking version of Snow White then, completely divorced from the animated classic. I don't know why that's a hard concept.
No, it isn't, but, that's where we are these days.
So, to people who misunderstand us or are choosing to misunderstand us, and there's nothing I can say to you that's going to change your mind, and I'm fine with that. We are perfectly happy with interpretations of things that are either geared towards a black audience or made with a black cast. That's all perfectly fine. It may not necessarily 100% appeal to either one of us, but that's also okay. We can like different things, and we don't have to like everything. That's kind of how that works. What we do try to do is be fair and tell you what's wrong with something. And at no point in the history of doing Damn You Hollywood has either one of us said this is wrong because it's black, which is the implication. I'll give you the last word on this, and then we can move
on. You got me thinking, and I think here's the closest we've ever come to this issue.
Mm-hmm.
When you really wanted to review Straight Outta Compton,
mm-hmm.
and I said, Mark, I love you. You know that I'm going to hate that movie, and I'll be honest about it, and I will give it praise where I think I can, but I don't think any good will come out of you and I reviewing that movie.
Yeah.
Well, you reviewed it with somebody else.
I reviewed it with Jed from the Casual Heroes. Another iteration of that same story, Creed 2.
Yeah.
Creed 2 and Creed 3, I reviewed with Jason and or Ronnie.
Yep.
My God, Jason and I every year dedicate an entire month to Afrocentric films. Musicals, action, comedies.
You should really look up the last couple of years of Mark and Jason doing Black History Month.
Some of it's tongue-in-cheek, but a lot of it we took very seriously. We've done director
stuff. Hang on, the stuff that is meant to be tongue-in-cheek, you take tongue-in-cheek. The stuff that's serious, you take serious.
Yeah, and we looked at. I mean, we did a Spike Lee focus. We've done a focus on Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor. We looked at music biopics this past year. Next year, we're looking at actual musicals, starting with The Wiz.
Yeah, you made a choice there.
Certainly did, Ollie. I love The Wiz. I think The Wiz is great.
I know.
Yeah, again, I've dedicated large portions of my recording time to just highlighting and Black features. I'm not the guy. Sorry. You can sit here all day long and say, "Oh, you guys just don't like the." Let me find the one line that he says. You guys just don't like the stuff that. What was it? Oh yeah. I noticed you guys love to be negative when it comes to Disney having black-led films. Not a single shred of evidence. Not one. The best you could come up with is The Little Mermaid, but then you're not really listening to the review. You're just reacting to the fact that I didn't like it.
Moreover, hey Mark, how'd you feel about Princess and the Frog, by the way?
The animated classic?
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite Disney movies of all time.
There we go.
Bar none. I love Mike. Did I tell you? No, I didn't, because I haven't talked to you, and this was last night. I took my kids to Disney yesterday, a company I apparently hate. And so I told my kids I wasn't buying gifts this year for Christmas. I've talked about this already. And I said, we're doing experiences, not gifts for Christmas. Where do you want to go? And they both said Disney. I've talked about that already. So last night was that trip. And on the ferry back from Magic Kingdom to our car, I said, what do you guys want to do next year? You want to keep this tradition up? And they said, absolutely. And my son goes, take us to New Orleans. And I cried happy tears like if Daniel Bryan had won the title. Because I love New Orleans, Robert, as we all know, which is a big part of why I love The Princess and the Frog. It's a celebration of New Orleans culture. Not enough to make me want to go on, the Princess and the Frog version of Splash Mountain, in the dead of winter in Florida. But yeah, I love The Princess and the Frog. Love New Orleans. Love all that stuff. Again, sorry, I'm not the guy.
Just saying, and let's be clear, there's a world, none of our gripes with the 2019 Lion King were about.
Yeah, I didn't like Donald Glover's voice
Simba.
work.
It's still not good.
Yeah,
he's back here as Simba. It's still not good, but that's a Donald Glover thing.
Yeah, that's a pitch of his voice. He was great as Lando in Solo, and it was one of the only thing about that movie I did like.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't recall disagreeing with that sentiment. That's not what we care about. We care about the fact that the movie sucks.
People are going, this is what happens when they get comments. This happens when we get a particular kind of comment. But all right, I think we're done as politely disagreeing with this perfectly lovely person who took time out of their day to comment on our podcast. It's unfortunate that he has this misreading of us, but not the first time I'll be misunderstood, won't be the last.
Also true.
And with that said, speaking of misunderstanding, here comes the money.
We're in the money. We're in the money.
And that, folks, is how you politely disagree with people. Could I be any more condescending?
A little bit.
I'll try harder. Thanks. All right. As we said earlier, on a budget of $200 million, this thing has made $328 million. I can't play the bomb sound, nor can I play V for victory.
No, this movie is going to maybe squeak by a profit, but that's about it. It is not going to be. Hang on. Okay, so let's take a second and do a little bit of math here on this, right?
Mhm.
$200 million budget, not including advertising. Tack on another 100 million for advertising, give or take. Seem fair?
Mhm.
Okay. At
They're
that
counting.
point,
They're counting on it to make another billion the way 2019 did.
yeah. At that point, when you're willing to invest 300 some odd million dollars into this thing, you are expecting it to do about $1 billion.
It's not.
It's not going to do that.
Yeah.
You're already falling in the markets where you get the most money. Where this is actually doing decently are places where you get less than 50% of your ticket sales.
Right. And domestically, it's being beaten by Sonic, which I'll talk about in just a second. But it's only doing well in worldwide markets. And as Robert just said, that looks great on paper, but when you dig into it, there's not as much profit as you might think. So again, this is going to be a miss for Disney.
For anyone who may be new to this particular bit of math, okay, just so everyone understands, when you do ticket sales in the United States, Canada, most of Europe, it's about a 55-45 split. The theater chain will get 45, the studio will get 55. That's assuming you're not splitting that up between different production companies as well. That's not really in play here, but in general. So the general back of the napkin math is you have to double your budget in ticket sales to hit the profitability mark. That's not true in China. In China, you get 25% of a ticket sale instead of 50% or 55%. And it might be lower than that. I'd have to double check. But the point being, you make less selling tickets in China than you do selling tickets in other locations. So if the bulk of your ticket sales are in China, your math has to be adjusted accordingly. This is why the last Transformers movie lost money, despite doubling its budget a little bit, because most of what it took in came from that market and netted less money to the studio. And that's the problem they're going to run into here.
Quick aside from our previous half a segment. I'm wearing a Pootie Tang shirt. Read a room. Anyway, as of December 29th, 2024, Mufasa and the Lion King has grossed $113.5 million in the U.S. and Canada, and $214.5 million in other territories for a worldwide gross of $328 million. In the U.S. and Canada, Mufasa the Lion King was released alongside Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and was originally projected to gross around $50 million from around 4,100 theaters in its opening weekend.
Well, those projections went down to
Goblin Town, baby. After making $13.3 million on its first day, weekend estimates were lowered. Yeah, it's only us. 36 to 38 million. It went on to debut 35 million, finishing second behind Sonic the Hedgehog 3. In its second weekend, the film retained Sonic the Hedgehog 3, where we did nothing but praise Idris Elba.
Also true.
The film all right, I'm done now. The film retained second place, grossing 37.1 million. In the UK and Ireland, the film made 4.4 million pounds, about 6 million US, in its opening weekend. In India, the film made 67.25 crore, that's about 7.9 million US in its first week. All right, Sonic the Hedgehog maintained its spot as number one.
You know what?
Second week in a
Can
row.
I just say, Sonic only having what, a 38% drop?
That is impressive.
That is stupidly impressive for how big it opened. That is.
I wish, we don't track it the way that we should, and I don't know if anyone does. But if you look at like second week drops, that might be the least second week drop of any number one movie all year.
That very well might be. It would not shock me one iota if it was. Heck of a hold for that movie, and God bless it, it deserves it.
Yeah. For the second week in a row, Mufasa was number 2. That actually got a gain of 3.9%. Good for it.
Again, a lot of things are going to gain. It's not uncommon for especially family movies to gain a bit over Christmas holidays, so
okay.
Not terribly surprised there.
Nosferatu, which we will talk about, I believe, next Monday.
I will be talking about it this coming Thursday, but yes.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to see it till Sunday.
That's fine. I won't do a whole spiel on it, but that did make my top 10.
Okay, great. As anything Robert Eggers should. That debuted at number 3. Wicked dropped from 3 to 4. Moana dropped from 4 to 5. A Complete Unknown. I want to talk about this for a second, so I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. I saw A Complete Unknown with my kids. It was fine. There was nothing about it that was unwholly appropriate for a 10 going on 65-year-old and an almost 14-year-old. I loved it. I'll give my little bit away for this Thursday. It got into my top 10. The critically acclaimed guys didn't love it. I heard their review on it, and they had a lot of complaints. Timothy Chalamet, I think, deserves an Oscar nom for Best Actor. I think he played an amazing Dylan. And then one of the criticisms for A Complete Unknown was it doesn't feel like you get to know Bob Dylan at all. That Bob Dylan is this enigma, and I kind of like that about the movie. You know, this movie isn't supposed to be a deep dive into Bob Dylan's psyche. This is a very something that I talked about with my daughter. So my daughter is very much into the punk rock aesthetic and lifestyle. Believe it or not, you know, the happy-go-lucky one that likes everybody and that likes everything and is everyone's friend. Is drawn to the rabble-rousing, rebellious mystique of the punk rock culture. My son thinks it's worthless. My son, Archie Bunker. My daughter, you know, fucking the lead singer of the Lunatics. So, two wildly different reactions to A Complete Unknown, but the movie is about Bob Dylan's transition from folk to electric, from acoustic to electric. And so the conclusion of the movie is his last, I believe, his last performance at Folk Fest, which I believe was in Connecticut, where he went to that show and played electric and was resoundingly booed off the stage.
As you would be if you went to a folk fest and played an electric guitar.
Sure. But it was but what came out of it was a conversation I had with my kid, an in-depth conversation I had with my kids about what, you know, folk music was kind of punk rock before punk rock and what it meant. And it was the soundtrack to a rising rebellion at the time. You know, this is the 60s. We're getting into Vietnam, you know, the counterculture revolution, civil rights. There's a lot going on in the world.
Rock and roll had gotten a little bit too corporate. So the counter movement wasn't harder rock. It was this complete opposite.
Yeah. There's a bit with Pete Seeger, after his trial for singing This Land Is Your Land, because it was deemed to be a communist song. And so there was a lot of discussion amongst me and my kids about folk and punk, and that Dylan is sort of an icon of the punk mentality. And it reminded me of what Jello Biafra had said about, like, I don't want to be singing Holiday in Cambodia for my lunch. You know, this idea of I don't want music to just be my job, the thing that pays me. I want to, as Jello Biafra put it, I want to make noise. I want to be loud. I want to cause disruption. George Carlin, comedian, profound thinker and funny man, entertainer, also said, you know, he made a joke about the lead, follow, get out of the way, and he was like, something like, lead, follow, get out of the way. Oh, fuck you. I resist. You know, I block or something like that. I can't remember what word he used, but I obstruct. That's what it was. Like, I obstruct. How about that? You know, that's the kind of the whole thing. Both folk and punk, you know, being disruptions to the norm, because the norm seems like it's going in a bad direction for the vast majority of people. And so Bob Dylan goes on this sort of journey to where, you know, he kind of comes to a point that I've gotten to. I've talked about this ad nauseum on the Metal Hammer of Doom with Jesse. I don't think music is changing anything. I think people enjoy, you know, how many NoFX concerts do you have to go to before you realize NoFX isn't going to change politics? How many Ministry shows? How many times does Al Jorgensen have to make an album that's anti-George W. Bush before you come to the conclusion no one gives a fuck? It's awesome. I love Houses of the Mole. Who gives a shit, though? Like, I'm glad I appreciate his commentary, but it's not changing the world. And Bob Dylan kind of reaching that same conclusion, going, folk music isn't going to change shit. And I'm bored now. And I want to do something different. I'm an artist. I have to grow. And so he does. And he starts playing electric. He starts doing other things. And that's kind of where the movie ends. And I love that. It's the reason it made my top 10. I'll talk about this a little bit more on Thursday. But I love the story of this movie. And I love the way Timothée Chalamet played Bob Dylan. And you don't have to know how Bob Dylan thinks and feels about things. He can remain an enigma because what he is this symbol of resistance, not just to the core culture, but to the counterculture. He is a mirror to the counterculture saying, you guys are full of shit. And the worst people in the counterculture are the people in the counterculture because they believe their own shit. Yeah. And they believe it religiously. And there's Bob Dylan going, you're full of it. This is nonsense. And that's what I loved about A Complete Unknown. I'm sure you could pick it apart. God knows we do with everything. But there was a lot that I had a big ass. I'm not even the world's biggest Bob Dylan fan. Like I like a lot of his songs, but if you told me to name 10 Bob Dylan songs right off the top of your head, half of them would be sung by Jimi Hendrix. That's my association with Bob Dylan. But I love this movie. I had a big ass smile on my face the entire time we were watching it. And when it was over, I felt joyous and happy and light. And I skipped out of the theater. And then we saw Mufasa 2 days later. And I wanted to skip in front of a car.
You went from feeling young, like when the world was new, to feeling like you wanted to go the way of all Earth.
Okay, so Chris has been bombarding us with comments. Let me put these on the screen real quick. He was like, Newport Folk Festival. Yes, I assume that meant Newport, Connecticut, but maybe I'm wrong. And then he said, I've been telling people this for years. Thank you, Chris. Love you, buddy. I told Chris he's my go-to guy for independent movies now. I keep referencing him on this podcast. Anyway, so anything before I share my screen again?
I haven't seen it, so I can't comment, but you did a better job selling me on potentially watching that than the trailer did.
That's fair. Look what a mismarketed movie. All right, moving on.
Yeah, if I'd known that was the selling point, like this is this artist's transition period, instead of me I came out of that first trailer for that one going, I've seen Walk the Line.
That's been a big comment. It was like, we get it. This is Walk the Line and/or Ray. It's not.
I've seen Ray. I've seen Walk the Line. I've seen the Queen one. I've seen a million of these.
Yeah.
We come out with 2 a year. You can use them as napkins.
So my son declared after watching this movie he doesn't like music biopics. And I said, hold on. Before you throw the baby out with the bathwater, let me show you Rocket Man. Okay.
Same thing.
It's very stylized, though. I think it does a good job.
That, yes. Stylistically, yes, that's very different, but still, they all start right before a big concert or a big moment, and then we do the flashback thing, and it's intercut, and it concludes as they go on stage. We see a little bit of the performance, then we get the title cards afterwards, how they died tragically 2 years later from AIDS or whatever.
God, Robert. All right, moving on. That debuted at number 6. Baby Girl. Oh, Jesus. Baby Girl on its second week, which I will be going to see, I believe, this Saturday.
I think you're making me review that one.
No, that's not the one I'm making you review. I'm making you review The Last Showgirl.
Isn't that part of that triple feature?
No, Honora and Amelia Perez are.
Right.
Baby Girl starring Nicole Kidman, which I'm very excited for. Debuted at number 7. Gladiator 2 fell from 6 to 8. Homestead 5 to 9. The Fire Inside. I can't make jokes tonight because of what just happened. But The Fire Inside debuted at 10. I heard the critically acclaimed guys review it. I don't have any desire to see it. I'm sure in about 2 weeks, Clarissa Shields will be whining that the movies failed to make her as big a star as boxing did. Never mind the boxing tried hand over fist, and she's just unlikable. Yeah. Bloody Axe Wound debuted at 22. Harbin 27. Better Man. So that debuted at number 30. That must be in limited release. That's the Robbie Williams movie where he's a chimp,
Yeah, I assume so.
which apparently is amazing. Like, again, critically acclaimed guys reviewed it. Not Whitney Seibold. William Bibiani just was doing cartwheels. He just thought it was the bee's knees.
I
I'm
haven't.
sorry. After Piece by Piece, I don't want to watch another one of these.
Look, I'm not interested in it.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in most movies like that, much less when your big thing is, well, no one has sympathy for a human being snorting cocaine. So if a chimp snorts cocaine, you have a different emotional reaction.
Oh,
I
now
don't care.
now I want to see it. But Vermiglio,
Of course you do.
debuted at 33, Santosh 36, 2073, 37, and that was the weekend that was worldwide. Inside Out 2, yeah, no real movement here. Moana 2, though, has crept up to 883. I believe last time we did this, it had already passed Dune, or it was
Yeah,
about to.
the big question is whether or not it'll get by Despicable Me 4, and we're
Yeah.
kind of thinking no, but
Yeah, well, so far it's tracking real well. So it's
well, we should have given that a little bit more credence because I still think it probably won't, but there's a big dearth of movies for January.
mhm, yeah.
Come back on Thursday when we do our year in review and year preview, and you'll see why.
So Moana 2 passed Dune Part 2 and is currently at 883. Wicked flew up the charts because it was.
No, it's not that different from where it was last time.
It felt lower the last time we talked about this, but it doesn't matter. It's at 635 now. It's past Godzilla times Kong. And
Decent
Kung Fu
chance it
Panda.
gets by. There's a decent chance it'll get by Dune Part 2. Probably doesn't catch Moana 2 though.
All right. So rounding out the top 10 are Kung Fu Panda 4, Venom: The Last Dance, and Beetlejuice. Down here at number 15, I just want to talk about this really quick. I saw It Ends With Us finally. So it's funny, the lovely ladies, the lovely young ladies, who I think are in their late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, in my office have been talking about an author, have been talking about a book, and then talked about a movie. And because I don't listen to women, that guy earlier would have had a better shot at me had he been like, "You don't like anything led by women." Okay, well that's closer to the truth. Anyway, they were talking about all of this, and then I wasn't paying any attention at all. I was trying to tune them all out. And then I had a date over, and we watched It Ends With Us because I remembered hearing something about it. And now after the fact, I learned what the big hubbub was with this movie. But it was in the back of my mind somewhere. So I go into work the next day and I'm like, oh, I've seen It Ends With Us. They're like the movie we've been talking about for a month, that we've all read the book, the movie that we've been nonstop talking about in this office. And I went, oh, that's what you guys were talking about? I don't listen. So have you seen It Ends With Us yet?
Nope. Didn't really plan to either, but
it's interesting. I gave it a 2 on my 3-point scale. It's a solid 2. It's interesting. The subtle look at domestic violence and verbal abuse turning to physical abuse in a relationship. These sort of, the snake-like slithering and crushing, of an emotional boa constrictor that is staying with somebody whose abuse starts out as small, almost not noticeable, and gradually over time becoming horrible. I think rang very true. I thought it was an honest look at how many relationships can be. So I don't know if it would reach you. I don't know. I there's a lot of your life you don't talk about publicly, and that's your business. And then there's me, who lives publicly as this podcast is. But I also mental health person, also a natural empath, also somebody who is interested in relationships. The movie spoke to me on a lot of different levels, and I was interested in what was going on. I think Blake Lively does a good job as an actress in the movie. I think most of the cast is there, and I think they're going for it, as much of a movie like that lets you. My problem with it was, I think both my date and I, when it was over, were both like, not entirely sure what we're going for here with this movie. And that was mostly based on the third act, like where it ends. Because, like, again, the insidious nature of abuse seeming like it's natural, normal behavior, and then it's well past the point of being too late before you realize it's not, rang true.
Yeah.
Some of the other stuff dealing with the next boyfriend and his relationship to her in the present, I was like, wait, what is the point of all of this? So it was I think, better than average, but still muddled experience at best. So there's my review of It Ends With Us.
Fair enough.
Worth a watch if you're at all interested, just because, and I don't want to get into like the behind the scenes stuff, but apparently the Blake Lively and the director have been at loggerheads and there's lawsuits going on and there's all,
Oh yeah.
yeah, the Town, which is an entertainment podcast that I listen to, it's appointment listening for me, said it's one of the biggest public disasters for a movie this year, and that's going some considering what happened with Wicked
and Disney in general.
Yeah. So that's that. Next, I wanted to ask you, because The Brutalist is out in, I think, limited release, or it's out wide right now. I thought it was excuse me. I thought The Brutalist was an Apple film. It's not. It's just, an indie. Have you seen the runtime on this thing?
No.
The runtime is 215 minutes.
Okay, so 2 hours is 120, 3 hours is 180. Another 60 is
40. 6 times 4 is 24.
Yeah. You said this was 200 and what minutes?
15. This is
So-
almost 4 hours.
I know why they called it The Brutalist, man. Jeez.
So we saw the trailer, and my genius son went, "I want to see this movie. This looks amazing." And I went, "Yay! It's on the short list for Best Picture this year. We should absolutely go see this art piece, this tribute to cinema. It's 215 minutes long." And he went, "Fuck you! Then we'll watch it at home. I'm not sitting there for 4 fucking hours." And then he brought up The Irishman. Oh, wait, that was you.
I didn't bring up The Irishman. We talked about that thing's runtime just now.
Yeah. I don't understand how they let a 215-minute movie go to theaters outside of a very limited release in New York and Los Angeles and Chicago.
Nobody
the fuck is
cares.
going to go to the movies to see this?
Nobody cares. I mean, look, we're going to review it, I think, by the time it goes, PVOD.
I hope it goes PVOD by then. Like I said, I thought this was like designed for Apple, like Killers of the Flower Moon, and I misread something somewhere. So I don't know. All right. So as far as what's coming up next, like I said, we've got our end of the year review this Thursday. Then we've got Nosferatu. Then The Last Showgirl comes out, but we're going to pair that with a couple of other movies so that we can get a bunch in at the same time. Then Wolfman, which everybody and their mother wants to be on. And then at the end of the month, we have another triple feature, just sort of catching up on Oscar. By that point, it looks like the date I have for Oscar noms announced is the 17th. So by then, the one on the 27th could change depending on what movies get nominated and which ones don't. But it's currently Blitz, Conclave, and The Brutalist. So that's what's going on with our sorry, Chris comment here. I will be seeing it, but I am not going to be super stoked about it. Yeah,
Fair enough.
I think The Brutalist is going to be amazing, but it's also going to feel a lot like homework.
Decent chance that's true.
All right. Anything else before we move on?
As far as the money goes, nah, not really.
All right. So here it is, the critical review.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Yeah, fuck us. We don't know what we're talking about.
Sure we don't.
Yes, a 55% critical score and an 88% audience score. Top critics at 62. Oh, all critics is lowered it to a split. Oh, that's odd. That doesn't happen all that
There's
often.
a lot of top critics being paid off.
Yeah. Taking that.
There's a lot of people afraid of being accused of not liking things that are African centric, right?
With people today. All right, all audiences is 81% and verified audience is 88%. And the AI writes, it's clearly racist. Barry Jenkins' Deft Hand and Lin-Manuel Miranda's music goes some way towards squaring the circle of life in Mufasa, but this fitfully soulful story is ill-served by its impersonal photorealistic animation style.
If that's how can you not see the writing problems with this?
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. Matt Burnett of Animats Reviews, YouTube. Mufasa the Lion King is slightly better than the 2019 remake. No, it isn't. But
No,
on
it's not.
But on its own, it's an animated feature that is almost good, but not enough to feel like the experience is fully worthwhile.
Yeah, that's true.
Gemma Cree of Film Ireland magazine. What proves much more interesting and reminiscent of director Barry Jenkins' earlier work is the exploration of masculinity through the relationship between Mufasa and Taka. What exploration are you talking about, madam?
I'd actually have welcomed a little bit of that. It would have been interesting.
Yeah. Good grief.
None of that is here.
Lisa Lamont of Culturist. In emulating reality, Mufasa fails to conjure up compelling fictional drama.
What a poor pull for that review. It's slight near to the bottom there.
I hate the fact that I have to go all the way up through these again.
I know, that is annoying. I wish they would have fixed that.
All right. Randy Jones of Randy Reviews. I'm glad Barry Jenkins got his bag, though. Oi. Speaking of terrible polls.
Speaking of terrible things to say about a movie, if your big takeaway is I'm glad the director got paid.
Which, well, given Disney and how they treat their animation department, I guess he's got a point.
Yeah, but those are non-unionized people, whereas the Directors Guild... Okay.
Carla Hay of Culture Mix. The animated musical Mufasa the Lion King delivers the expected eye-catching visuals, but the story, dialogue, and songs are underwhelming and tedious. This disappointing prequel lazily copies the formula of other Lion King films.
Lazily being the key expression there.
Sarah Michelle Fetters of MovieFreak.com, top critic. Jenkins isn't afraid to allow his animals to take on a few human qualities. He sacrifices perfection to achieve emotional expression. The filmmaker tackles this prequel as if it were an animated film, and even better, Disney allows him that freedom.
They did.
I was going to say, they just said make something that's going to make $1 billion. They don't give a fuck what he did.
I've seen his earlier work. This is not reminiscent of it.
Yeah.
They allowed him the freedom. No, they didn't at all.
Let's see. Kathia Woods of the Philadelphia Tribune. Blue Ivy, daughter of Jay-Z and Beyonce, also made her mark in the role of Kiara. Can I talk about Kiara for a moment? I didn't realize.
By all means.
I didn't realize that was a female lion.
Okay.
The whole time I just thought it was a young boy with a high-pitched voice.
Okay.
I don't know what that says about me or this movie.
I don't either.
Just wanted to share that. Let's see. Katie Walsh of Tribune News Service, top critic. Jenkins expands the scope and range of this world, offering up a story that exists in the realm of the Lion King, but doesn't retread on old material or desecrate it.
Counterpoint.
My daughter would have words with you.
Yeah, you're not a person who knows anything about the material being desecrated, so your opinion means nothing.
Jeff didn't like it either. Jeff Harris of 401mania.com. To paraphrase a better song from a much better movie, Mufasa fails to find its place on the path unwinding in the great circle of life.
Yeah, you know what? That's not a bad reuse of that line.
Okay. Kyle Smith of the Wall Street Journal, top critic.
To be sure, but
yeah. With its ho-hum action scenes and lowbrow comedy, Mufasa is as tired as the lion in the movie, whose sole ambition is to nap in the sun.
not wrong.
Yeah. Let's see. Amy Mikkelsen of the Los Angeles Times, who's top critic. Every week, it's a new paper or a new outlet. The company's zeal for prequels has resulted in a movie about two kittens who we've all seen meet a grisly death. To my morbid delight, Mufasa starts off by killing one of them again.
Okay. There's a reason you can't find consistent work.
Richard Krause of The Richard Krause. Instead of being enhanced by the endless possibilities of CGI, Mufasa the Lion King feels limited by it. It's filled with visual tricks, courtesy of the computer animation, but there's very little magic.
Also true.
Let's see. Scott Mendelson. Of the Outside Scoop Substack. You poor man. Barry Jenkins' prequel is better than Jon Favreau's The Lion King. No, it isn't. And closer in spirit to Disney's better than they need to be mid-2010s tentpoles, like Jon Favreau's Jungle Book, than their recent nostalgia-chasing cultural timid rehashes.
Why did you reference Jon Favreau twice?
Because he's in the Substack.
Fair enough.
Jeremy Johns at jeremyjohns.com.
Nope, not doing it.
Oh, you killjoy.
Don't care how much you blink at me at Morse code.
The music in Mufasa, The Lion King, doesn't feel like Lion King music. Aside from that, it doesn't stand out as anything special.
Again, not wrong. This is what happens when you hire Lin-Manuel Miranda. He's a one-trick pony.
Alan Ng, A Film Threat, a profoundly awful movie.
I want to disagree because I don't think it's profound even in its awfulness, but that's nitpicking.
Travis Hobson of Punch Drunk Critics. Jenkins manages to overcome artistic pitfalls to craft a gorgeous, engaging tale of brotherhood, privilege, and sibling rivalry in the wild. Travis Hobson, speaking up for the 4-year-olds.
Trying desperately to get invited into parties.
Yeah. We'll do one more of these and then put this puppy to bed. Let's see. Lindsay Barr of the Associated Press, top critic. Mufasa, The Lion King is better than the ones that came before it, but that doesn't mean it's great. Well said, Lindsay. Well said.
It's not better than the 2019 Lion King.
Hang on, I shut the screen down, but this is the last one. Robbie Collin of Daily Telegraph. This guy's always good for a laugh. Top critic. Right. While Mufasa is never as actively depressing as 2019's Dumbo or 2022's Pinocchio, the exercise has perhaps never felt as craven or pointless as it does here.
You know what? Yes. Absolutely yes.
Boy, if you're like, you only pick on the black movies, let me tell you, folks, you haven't seen an ass-kicking that would make the people in American History X blush like what we did to 2022's Pinocchio.
Yeah,
that was an early Zach one, too. Like, we had to be... Even Zach, who's like, you know, born of grace and touched by angels, was like, this fucking movie.
This is what happens when you piss on something people love.
Yeah.
The fact that it was... Look, that whole exercise was saved like 2 weeks later when we got to talk about Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, which was amazing.
Yeah. Just thinking about all the stuff that you and I have profoundly disliked.
Dude, we have kicked the crap out of a lot of things on this show.
Yeah. And there are times when you and I have completely disagreed. You know, again, you brought up Straight Outta Compton. I had a lot of really nice things to say about Straight Outta Compton. I thought it was well acted. I thought, you know, the problem with Straight Outta Compton was the problem you have with a lot of biopics. This happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, and we're done now. And, you know, and some things are overly fictionalized to keep with the narrative, and some things are on point, and it's like this salad. It reminds me of something my cousin said about Rocket Man. He was like, he didn't like Rocket Man because that's not really what happened to Elton John, and he was pissed about it. Like, okay, it's a story.
It's meant to reflect. It's meant to reflect how he experienced it, not necessarily what actually happened, which is
and then that's
an
the
interesting bit of dichotomy to play out between how you experience something versus reality.
It's funny because they came out at the same time, they often get compared to each other, but that was a lot of what was said about Bohemian Rhapsody too. It was like, hey, wait a minute, those events don't happen in that order. Yes, and Def Leppard weren't sober during the Hysteria tour. We get it, but we tell stories, people. These are not meant to be Wikipedia entries.
Yeah, but Bohemian Rhapsody had a bunch of other. Here's the big problem with Bohemian Rhapsody. One, it's edited terribly, like machine gun fire.
Yeah.
Two, there's a world of difference between moderately tweaking the sequence of events and catastrophically ignoring things.
Right.
Which is more what Bohemian Rhapsody did.
Yeah. All right. So that is... Boy, well, also, you can tell when Robert and I really don't like something because we'll talk about anything else.
True.
The only exception to that is the Northman review, where that was more of just like, there was just stuff we had to process. But that movie, that review is 3 hours, and at least an hour of it was devoted exclusively to the Northman.
Yeah.
So, folks, it's our last full review of the year. And I'm like... And the only thing that gave this any lifeblood is someone politely called us racist. That's how good this movie is.
It's not good.
It's been a year, Robert. I want a moment of reflection.
Okay,
this was the year that a lot of things got kicked into next year, and so we were like, so this was the what's left year. This was the year where we were going to talk about certain things, and then we had to pivot. Like Lisa Frankenstein.
Okay, here's my here's a preview of this, because this Thursday, everybody, to get to the plugs a little bit early, we'll be doing our 2024 year in review, which is Mark and I will have our 10 best and 5 worst movies of the year. And Alexis, yeah. And we will look ahead to 2025. We'll talk about the schedule such as it exists at the moment, and the studio executives will laugh because everything's going to get moved around anyway. That's how these things work.
It's moved at least 2 or 3 times. I have to periodically keep checking it because even in just the last few weeks, things moved.
Yeah, the Batman got pushed back.
Yeah, so did the Running Man.
That
got pushed up, not back.
But we got moved. But as far as my 10 best movies of the year, here's a brief preview. Mark, can I tell you I struggled
to fill out 10 slots?
I really did. And I got thinking about last year because, we did this last year. And somewhere in my head, I went, last year was pretty good. I had 5 solid picks last year.
Right.
I mean, I had because I had Oppenheimer, Godzilla -1, The Banshees of Inisherin, When Evil Lurks, and what's the 5th one I'm forgetting?
Was the Banshees on that list? Because didn't that come out the year before?
I could have sworn it was the same year. It was the same.
We talked about it during the Oscar show, but the Oscar show was
right. It was the same Oscar cycle, not necessarily the same calendar year. Okay.
Right.
So it might not have been, but yeah, I had a good solid 5 movies that I have thought about and gone back to and rewatched on a few in some cases. There was good stuff there. And filling out the last 5 last year was a little bit of just, all right, what didn't I hate? What could I find some value in here? We'll plug these in. Nothing that I have seen this year, and bear in mind, I haven't seen everything, so I don't pretend to, but nothing I have seen has actually hit me.
So, I want to quick address that, and then we really should get into real plugs. I can't accept from both of us, but other people say it too, and it's sort of common parlance now. There's nothing good out there. There is. You have to look for it, and it's not going to be what you think it is. And my question to you is, I have kind of had to look at other people's lists of like what's the best, or look at ratings lists, like what's the top rated. Like I have to now do homework. When I'm not just willing to just lay on my back and go with my hands and legs up in the air and just go, everything stinks. Nothing excites me. I am instead going to go back on all four of my paws, and I'm going to hunt out for the things that everyone else is saying I should be watching, and seeing if I agree. So, how much of your 50-word or less answer? How much of your rooting around is dedicated to knowingly searching for what everyone else whose opinion matters says is the best?
A little bit. Part of my problem is I'm gonna phrase this badly, and I'm gonna so I apologize if this annoys anyone out there who might be listening. There's a lot of people whose opinions I listen to that I know I disagree with.
Mm-hmm.
So I know a lot of people who said, "Boy, you have to watch. I saw the TV glow." The hell I don't.
Yeah.
I really don't.
That's not one I would recommend to you, no.
But that's what a lot of it is. So it's a lot of my movie news and other reviewers or whatnot that I listen to are people not that I agree with, but that I understand.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see someone give a glowing review to Heretic, like, oh, I know why you did that. I know you're wrong.
Yeah.
Or I profoundly disagree.
Yeah,
but
I get you, because I have that same struggle with critically acclaimed. It's so funny because I was listening to that on the car ride to Disney, and Jonas sort of grabs my arm and goes, "Do you actually agree with these guys?" As if to say, "Do you actually agree with these fuckers?" And half the time, yeah, half the time, no. But their value is that they're a good spotlight.
Yeah. And that's a lot of what it's been for me, is a lot of people that I know, that I understand, whether I agree with them or not.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing myself generally relative to their opinions. And I'm not saying that the year 2024 has been bereft of quality film. I'm saying, because if you look at like the back 10 of either of our lists, right? Like mine are not in any particular order at the moment. And I don't know that I will get them in a particular order by the time Thursday rolls around. Just because it doesn't matter. I mean, I think last year I did okay. Here's my top 2. The rest of these you can swap around pretty much as you please. It doesn't really matter that much. But part of the back, usually there's like 4 to 6 spots on my top 10 that are maybe not the best movies, but stuff that really speaks to us.
Yeah, I've been open in saying my top 10 is a mixture of best made and most enjoyed.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's entirely the best made, and I can't get away from that.
True.
Or sometimes it's entirely the most enjoyed, and Robert stabs himself in one of his eyes.
The third eye, I used to have them.
Yeah.
But personally, from everything I've seen thus far, and I've got a couple of more days, there's a few others I do want to kind of root around at. But it's a lot of stuff that hasn't, touched me in any kind of way. Godzilla -1, I actually really liked. Banshees of Inisherin gave me a mild existential crisis. And just none of that has come my way this year. I mean, there's stuff that's been not bad. Again, I've got 10 slots, and at the moment they're full. But I don't have, you mentioned before, like you try to find at some point at least one movie each year that you can rave about.
Yeah. What's my poor things? What's my fresh?
Yeah. And last year I had a couple of those. On the horror side, I had When Evil Lurks, which I really, really enjoyed. I haven't had any of that this year. I just haven't found
Not even Late Night with the Devil, or the other one that you like, Long Legs.
They're not bad. They're probably, I think both of those are on my list, but have I raved about them? Have I brought them up at all since reviewing them?
Yeah. I think only one movie, even I know what my number 1 is, and I don't want to give it away now, but I don't think I think in talking, when the subject matter comes up, I've gone, oh yeah, that was my number 1 movie of the year.
Holdovers. That was the other one from
Yeah.
last year.
Right. My number one movie is definitely the most even between most enjoyed and best made. So it got the number one spot.
Yeah.
But there's only been really one other movie this year that I've talked about with glowing praise and have told people, "Oh my God, you got to watch this." And it's one that I've thought about, and it's one that we did recently. You can probably guess which one it is. But like, I might add to that A Complete Unknown, but I also just saw it, so it's still fresh in my head. But I've spent a lot of time kind of going back over everything that we've done this year a couple of times, and it's really been only in the last month that anything, stayed with me. There's one exception to that. There's one exception to that, and I have to keep reminding myself how much I liked it.
Which one? Just out of curiosity.
Beverly Hills Cop 4.
Okay.
And it's more I enjoyed it more than it was well made.
Yeah,
which again, I have
fine.
to keep reminding myself I said that is my point. Like, I keep forgetting how much, like, I gushed incessantly about Beverly Hills Cop 4, and I keep forgetting that I did that. It's my problem here. So
but point being, like, that's kind of where we are in general. It's where I am. Like, I've got a list. I may tweak a few things between now and Thursday, but there's nothing on my list that I am like, I'm going to rewatch. I'm not going to watch any of those again.
It's so funny because the last thing I'll say, and then I'm just going to start going into actual plugs. I watched Dee on Saturday or Friday or Saturday, it was Friday. But we had seen the trailer for it. It had an Asian kid in it, so of course my daughter was doing cartwheels in the theater. So it's on Peacock now, and it was kind of I kind of had the same experience with that I have with Drive Away Dolls, where when I saw the trailer for it, it sparked an interest, and I was like, I got to make sure I see this thing. And it came and went in theaters. There was no time to go see it, and now it's on Peacock. I'm like, well, now it's my chance. Same thing with Drive Away Dolls, where I actually, because I was too late and I was too tired, fell asleep on that one in the theaters, and I saw it was on Peacock, and I'm like, now it's my chance. And in both cases, I had the same reaction. I'm like, oh, this isn't nearly as good as I wanted it to be. And that has been a lot of this year, where there were some interesting pitches for ideas, and then I saw them, and I went, oh, this isn't nearly as good as I wanted it to be. I was like I'm ready for it, and then it's like, oh, I'm disappointed. All right, so I'm disappointed is the phrase that pays here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network.
Boy, does it.
This Thursday is our year in review and our look forward at 2025, where we're gonna live on the air make our schedule. It's gonna be real fun.
A good chunk of it
for people who are watching. No show this Sunday, and then we're back again Monday with Nosferatu, and that will be myself, Robert, Alexis Dorian, and Chris Owen from Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do. So if everyone actually shows up, that's going to be a loaded show. And then Thursday, I have to start watching this now. Star Trek Lower Decks Season 5, the final season. It'll be myself and David Wright. That's what I got going on. What do you got going
on? I cover mixed martial arts and professional wrestling over at 411mania.com. I also did double check on Banshees. It came out in 2022, so it was part of the Oscar show, but didn't release in 23. So that's why I didn't.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it was something like that. Anyway, on Oscar show, not on year-end show. Long story short, there. So SmackDown is now 3 hours long.
Yikes!
So Fridays, I'll be doing that and trying not to want to die. Anyway, there is no UFC event this Saturday. There will be one next Saturday. This coming Sunday, the 411 Ground and Pound MMA show is back to preview that event. It sucks. It's a really terrible event on paper, but I'll be previewing it anyway because that's what I do. And yeah, Thursday will be our 2024 year in review. Watch Mark and I get the old pitchfork and torches, and we are going to start a riot, and we're going to burn this sucker down.
We're going to tear this motherfucker up. We're going to burn this motherfucker down.
If you feel so inclined.
All right. Folks.
I mean, I don't feel the need to tear it up before burning it down, but that's because it seems inefficient to me. I'd rather just burn it, but You know what? You have controlling voting share in the stock options here, so we do it your way.
Super. All right, folks. Well, before we before we go to our year-end show, which we've got so much going on in that I might forget to say this. I just want to thank everybody. It's been like a record year in terms of like live viewership. Some of that was driven because we had new people on the show and they bring their own audience. You know, Dorian is like, you know, his Snoop Dogg. Shows up with a fucking posse, and all his friends watch. Some of those people stayed along, and some of those people will only watch when Dorian or Mick or Shay come on, or Mac. But we thank all of them, because without them there wouldn't be new people. I want to thank all of the people who have guested on. You know, Jason, Chris, obviously Alexis, who sometimes thinks she's a part of the show.
Be nice.
No. You know, we're friends who talk about movies. It's always nice to have these people along. You know, I like it when it's just me and Robert, but certainly other voices bring another element to the show that I wouldn't have without them. So I appreciate that. But like I was starting to say about our audience, a lot of my friends that I've made this year have hung out and watched. And, you know, friends of the people that we've had on. And, you know, for those of you that stayed, that, you know, that continue to listen, continue to come back week after week, whether live or after the fact, we appreciate you. I've been doing this for 10 years now, and it's lasted a lot longer than a lot of my personal relationships, for what that's worth. And it'll keep going until one or both of us get sick of doing it. But I am occasionally exhausted by this endeavor, but then I am renewed for one reason or another to keep doing it. And that's largely in part to the people that watch and are interested in what we have to say. So I just want to say thank you. It's been an interesting year. It's funny. Of course, now my camera fucking freezes.
Well, while Mark tries to fix that, let me just echo his sentiment very briefly here. To everyone who's watched live or after the fact, we are eternally grateful for all of you. I mean that sincerely. You have a lot of choices for this kind of thing. Some of them better than what we do. Some of them may be more informed. Some of them more entertaining. And I think it's rare you get something that's on all three accounts better than what we do here, but that might be a little bit of just personal pride talking. So, sincerely, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being along for this ride, for whatever service we provide to you, whether that's entertainment, education, or you throw us on and let the dulcet tones of Mark and I arguing put your children to sleep. I don't care. Any of that, we'll take it all.
I was starting to say, I live very publicly, and I live very publicly on this podcast. So in many ways, it's somewhat documents what's going on in my personal life. But like I said, it's one of the things that I personally can count on, and it brings me a lot of comfort to come here and do this and know that at least to one degree or another people are interested. And I want to thank Robert. Sometimes this is painful for him. and yet he comes back. So speaking of domestic violence,
what are you saying about the insidious nature of domestic abuse?
I just fucking said that. I was like, speaking of domestic violence. No, Robert doesn't have to do this. Robert has other people he can talk to. Robert has other things he can do with his time. But he chooses to be here, and he chooses to subject himself to my whim of the week and what I decide that this podcast should be talking about. And, you know, as he's pointed out to me on many occasions, he might have an opinion on what we should or shouldn't do, but he just goes with my flow. So I just want to say thank you for being here with me and being a solid partner. Sometimes we fight and sometimes we love, but we're always here, and we're always here doing it for the people.
For the people, Mark.
For the people, for the culture, Robert. All right.
Okay.
And on that note,
not dodging those accusations now, are we?
Nope. All right. For Robert Winfree, I'm Mark Radulich. This has been Damn You Hollywood. Thank you for joining us this past year. Be well, be safe, and behave.